So I just reviewed 2 surveys, like super short surveys for a client, and I noticed something that I've talked about before, but wanted to talk about again. A word that I really don't want to see in any of your surveys. And. A-N-D. Just no. Red flag. Immediately no on the word and. Here's why. So when you're asking a question, you only want to ask about one thing at a time. So if you put in an and, I know you're not asking about one thing, you're asking about 2 different things. And the problem with that is I might have a different response to the first thing than I do to the second thing, and then how do I answer? Let's look at an example. This isn't from my client, this was just something that popped up in my LinkedIn feed. So this question says, the conversations in my feed today feel respectful, 1, and welcoming, 2. So it's one question, I have one chance to answer it, and it's asking if the conversations feel respectful and welcoming. Now, you might want to argue and say, if something feels welcoming, it must feel respectful, because how could it feel welcoming if it's not respectful? Okay, sure. I'll give you that. But what about conversations that feel respectful? They're respectful, but not necessarily welcoming. How do I answer that question? Do I agree because it was respectful? Do I put it in the middle because it was respectful and not welcoming? Do I disagree because it was not welcoming, right? Confusion abounds. That happens every time you put in an and. Every time you put in an and, you're creating confusion. It can create confusion for the person taking the survey because now they have to make a decision about how to answer if both of the things don't reflect their experience to the same degree, extent, both aren't true for them. And it can also create confusion when you're trying to share this data. Because when LinkedIn shares this out, it's going to say, X% of people agreed that the conversations in their feed today felt respectful and welcoming. So if I hear that, I'm thinking, okay, both of those things were true. People said it was both respectful and welcoming. And maybe they said that, but maybe one of those 2 things were true and they just agreed because it was one of the 2 things, right? Confusion. You just don't have the certainty that I personally would want in asking and sharing data like this. Personally, I wouldn't use a neutral category, and I'm very unclear on what those circles in between neutral and the other categories actually mean, so I would dump those as well.